You may have seen that earlier this week, President Biden mistakenly said he has declared a climate emergency. He has not. That may come. But this most recent gaffe is part and parcel of the hysteria surrounding what has been an extremely hot summer. You know, on hot summer days in the unair-conditioned house in Washington, D.C., where I grew up, my father would often say to me, "It's hot as tofu." I didn't understand the expression, but I did assume that it meant one's foot and toes, encased in a sweltering shoe, are longing to escape to a flip-flop or a sandal. Well, it wasn't until today, another hot summer day, that I researched that expression, hot as tofu. Tofut actually refers to the ancient biblical city of Tofut, spelled T-O-P-H-E-T, just outside of Jerusalem, where worshipers engaged in a ritual of passing a child through a flame, most likely child sacrifice. Well, that's something that the Bible condemned. The city of Tofut was destroyed. And that brings us to the summer of 2023, where again, it's hot as Tofut. Temperatures are roiling, and so are tempers. It is so hot that repair shops in some states are warning motorists not to overinflate tires lest they pop from heat. It's so hot that in D.C., the federal government on Monday dismissed workers early in anticipation of a huge line of evening thunderstorms that came as predicted, leaving not only D.C. but millions of people up and down the East Coast without power and thousands of flights disrupted. It has been so hot that the city of Phoenix broke, to quote the New York Times, 19 consecutive days of 110 degrees or higher. Much of the northern hemisphere, the Times said, is experiencing withering high temperatures, which scientists warn are increasingly likely. Increasingly likely? According to whom? What scientists? I suspect not Nobel laureate Bjorn Lomborg, a climate scientist who believes in climate change and in increasing CO2 levels, but who says we can adapt. He's not ready to practice child sacrifice to appease the false gods of climate disaster, and I'm only half joking about that. Because if you Google the phrase "stop having children for climate change," it yields 540 million results. The first of which, while not advocating child sacrifice, does suggest something kind of close to it. Quote, "Having fewer children does reduce your carbon emissions, but some countries may face significant problems if their populations continue to age and shrink." Scientist Bjorn Lomborg's Twitter feed is routinely refuting this type of climate alarmism. Here's one of his tweets. "Polar bear population increasing, but doesn't fit climate narrative, so info canceled." Reality? Polar bears were intensely hunted. 1976, world banned much hunting. Polar bear population recovered and now at its highest in 6 decades. Or this tweet from Lomborg. 5 years ago, Greta Thunberg tweeted that climate change will wipe out all of humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years. That tweet is now deleted. Or this tweet from Lomborg. Climate-related disasters killed ever fewer in 2022, 97.6% less than a century ago. Richer and more resilient societies reduce disaster deaths and swamp any potential climate signal. Why is this not reported? Instead, media only delivers climate doom. And one more Lomborg tweet. January 20th, just silly. John Kerry claims at Davos that 50% of all species have been killed. No. The right number is about 0.7%, just one of the many remarkable things he's been saying at Davos. So why such outlandish and downright phony claims about climate change? Well, here's a reveal. Last week, the hugely influential environmental group Greenpeace International, with an annual budget of almost $259 million, tweeted this. "Climate justice is gender justice. Climate justice is racial justice. Climate justice is economic justice. Climate justice is environmental justice." The tweet reveals what critics say is the true motivation of climate alarmism, and it comes straight from the mouth of Karl Marx: to tear down capitalist society, to redistribute wealth, and achieve so-called equity under the guise of fixing the climate. As with all authoritarian movements, those who get in the way must be silenced.
I was censored by Facebook.
You were?
I was.
How so?
When my last book came out, they censored True Facts.
Which book is that?
Apocalypse Never.
This one?
Yep.
How so were you censored? Like, what did you say that was?
They put a like a warning label on the article that was being shared. That was the initial article announcing the book, saying this contains misleading and false information. It's not true. It didn't contain a single piece of false information.
That may help to explain why the arguably most eloquent presidential candidate in this election cycle is getting very little attention for stating facts like these.
Are global surface temperatures going up? Yes. Is that likely due to man-made causes? Yes. Is that an existential threat to humanity? There is no evidence to support that. To the contrary, 8 times as many people die of cold temperatures rather than warm ones. The Earth today is more covered by green surface area than it was even a century ago because carbon dioxide is plant food. Plants actually grow in slightly warmer climates. The climate disaster-related death rate is down by 98% over the last century, directly attributable to more abundant and plentiful access and use of fossil fuels.
On my daily dog walk on another blazing hot summer day where I now live in Florida, I pondered the poor plight of our 2 Labrador retrievers burdened with their heavy winter coats, a burden that mankind does not carry.
Come on, Trudy. Let's go. You can do it. Good girl. You can do it. You can't adapt, but I can.
Man can and will adapt to these hot summer days for the foreseeable future. But looking much further ahead, science says that as the sun burns up its hydrogen fuel, it will devour itself and Earth will be enveloped in the fire. Perhaps it will be a burst of gamma radiation that fries us all. It is not dissimilar to what many Bible passages say about the end times. And on that note, a study just released last week found that scientists are shocked to discover that light from our sun, emitted in the form of gamma rays, is many times more powerful than previously thought, reaching energies of nearly 10 trillion volts. All that gamma radiation gets trapped in the thermosphere about 200 miles up. But of that discovery, one scientist said in a reminder to us all, and I'm quoting, "We thought we had this star figured out, but that's not the case," end quote. Apparently, the science is not settled.